Hello, everyone. This is the Free American Press with your host, Alexander Hora. Today, we're going to be having the president of Miles Franklin on the show, Andy Schectman. But before we get started, if you could please subscribe to the Free American Press and also like the video, that would be really appreciated. Hello, Andy. Thank you for being on the show.
Good to see you again, young man. Alex, it's always good to be here with you, and certainly happy it's Friday. It's been another crazy week, but always good to wrap things up, tie a bow on it with you. So hope you're doing well.
Oh, I'm doing well, thanks. So I was going to share the screen really quick to show you this. So Francis Macron, their leader, is urging the G7 to sell its gold reserves to fund a bailout for Africa. And one thing that I found rather interesting was that the G7 includes, the whole Western world, all the major countries, Canada, the United States, England, but it doesn't include Russia and China. So I had a question for you, and who do you think Macron is planning on selling all this gold to?
So probably right back to the IMF or to the Bank of International Settlements. I just think it's stupid already. The Western central banks talk about selling gold to fund a bailout. When the Chinese look at it with the Chinese Belt Road and Rail Initiative connecting Asia and Africa, they look to infrastructure building and investment. In other words, right there, you kind of encapsulate the two ideologies. On one hand, you have the Western Keynesian-based system, which is based upon debt and bailouts and consumption and spending. And you look at what's going on between Asia and Africa, the largest infrastructure project ever attempted, the Chinese Belt Road and Rail Initiative. And how are they doing it? They're doing it through infrastructure, building and investment, and doing things in a way that will enrich the country, not through bailing them out, but through building their infrastructure. Excuse me. And when you go through that article and look towards the bottom, there's an interesting graph that shows the Western central banks always seem to sell their gold at the wrong time. Gordon Brown did it many years ago, right at the very bottom, right at gold at $252 an ounce, literally at the worst possible time. You see the Bank of Canada there, a country that is very resource rich and has a rich history with precious metals. They sell all of their gold at the worst possible time. And I guess if we now see France following suit with the idiocy of the Western banks selling their gold when the East are accumulating in hand over fist, when massive deliveries off of COMEX are happening day after day after day by the most sophisticated, well-funded, well-informed private investors in the world, I guess that means we should all go long on gold right now, because when the Western central banks, either through lip service or just idiocy, decide to sell their gold, history has shown it's the right time to be buying it, just when they're trying to talk us all into selling it, following suit, thinking that it is an archaic relic of years past. I will promise you that the Chinese and the Russians and the Indians and many other nations don't view it that way right now.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It seems like there's going to be a massive real wealth transfer between the Western world going into the Eastern world. So do you think the G7 nations selling all their gold will break the dollar?
No, I don't think that's what will break the dollar. I just think it will weaken the G7 nations precipitously, because remember, April of 2019, the Bank of International Settlements did what? Reclassified gold as the only other tier 1 reserve asset in the world. That's as good as cash. In other words, tier 1 means if you take $1 million loan and have it backed by $1 million in cash, it's riskless loan to the institution making the loan. Same thing here. If you are a foreign central bank and you want to take out a loan or do business and put up gold or US dollars, the only two tier 1 assets, why then it's riskless. So the most powerful bankers in the world, the central bankers, have now called gold tier 1, riskless. So why sell it? Why sell what the rest of the world is accumulating at a period of time for a bailout, instead of doing something a little bit more constructive? Instead of bailing them out, how about helping them out by building their infrastructure? Instead of giving them fish, teach them to fish. invest in the country, incentivize them to invest and build their infrastructure and reinvest and save instead of giving and indebting them through bailouts. I think it's the wrong message. I think it's the wrong time. And I think it's just flat out wrong when you look at what the Eastern central banks are doing, in particular India, China, and Russia. They're massively accumulating it. And they will stand there happily with their hands open to take it. What I think will cripple the dollar ultimately is the issuance of the new Chinese digital yuan, which is funding the new Belt, Road, and Rail Initiative. Funding is the wrong word. It is being used to implement transactions. They are incentivizing all of the institutions that they're bidding out contracts to build out this Belt Road Initiative between Asia and Africa. They are trying to settle all of those contracts in the digital yuan. That's 70% of human population that is going to be using the new digital yuan. You are teaching 7 out of 10 people in the world that is another currency that is not the US dollar for settlement. And I truly do believe, Alistair McLeod came out last week and said that he believed that the Chinese hold 38,000 tons of gold, almost 5 times what we supposedly have. And remember, Fort Knox hasn't been audited in 55 years, or excuse me, since 1955, pardon me, a lot longer than 55 years. And the massive acquisition of gold in China is not just to the state, which he believed to have 20,000 tons. For years, they've been running advertising campaigns on billboards and buses and television shows, telling their citizens to accumulate gold because it is wealth. And he believes that the people have 18,000 tons of gold. This is a country that would have, if that to be the case, not only 5 times as much gold as we do. They're the largest producer in the world, the largest accumulator in the world through imports, and they don't export an ounce. Where am I going with this? Where am I going with this is the fact that once the dollar starts to spiral down the inflationary drain, I believe they will come out and issue a peg. They will have a little more transparency, obviously, with how many ounces they hold, because they really are very private about it, and we aren't really sure what they hold. Alistair took some calculations and came up with 38,000 tons, but I believe they'll peg their new digital yuan to gold at some point, and that's when the dollar will lose its singular world reserve status from a currency that is based upon debt and the dying last breaths of the Keynesian-based system into a currency that is pegged to gold and is being indoctrinated across the globe. So I don't think this will blow up the dollar, not yet. But I do think that at some point, if the Chinese really get a foothold with this new currency and then peg it to gold, the days of the dollar will be over very quickly.
Yeah, definitely. So there's this famous quote, those who own the gold make the rules, or something like that. So the main question, I think, for most people is, why is the G7 planning its own destruction with this massive transfer of real wealth?
Logic just wouldn't even, it's just impossible to even to explain something like that, other than to say maybe it's rhetoric. It's rhetoric to keep people believing that the euro and the dollar and the Western central bank currencies aren't in trouble, that you should sell gold, which is an anchor, which is now a tier 1 reserve asset, which is now being massively accumulated by many central banks around the globe. There's no reason to accumulate it. Either it's lip service to misdirect people away from alternatives to Western central bank currencies, or it's just pure idiocy. Bottom line is the fact that it has been reclassified as tier 1, the fact that the central banks have been buying it literally for the last 4 years and accumulating it. And now that you see massive deliveries off of COMEX by the sovereign wealth funds and the family offices, it makes no sense to me, Alex, other than the fact that it's rhetoric, it's lip service, it's misdirection. And quite frankly, I think it's following suit to what Gordon Brown did in 2002 and to what the Bank of Canada did a few years ago, talking about relinquishing their gold at precisely the worst time.
Yeah, so do you think we're going to be seeing a repeat of history, with this chart? They're selling their gold right now. They're planning to anyway. Do you think we're going to see it go up again like it did, in in recent past?
Yeah, ultimately, I think that gold will go higher than people think possible. And I think that's why the banks have been accumulating. The European Central Banks, Bank of Hungary, Turkey, Austria, Germany, Poland, Dutch National Bank, they've all been massively accumulating. And then you've got China and India and Russia and the Arab nations, they're all accumulating it. And it's the stupid banks of the West relinquishing real money in an effort to bail out Africa. How about invest in Africa and teach them how to build an infrastructure and reinvest and to save rather than bailing out, which teaches you nothing. And I just think that the West have it all wrong. And, gold is not an investment, Alex. Gold has been wealth for over 5,000 years. The Chinese know that. They have the longest history with it. And I just happen to think that the Western ideology hasn't worked for a long time. And when you have a culture that embraces a Keynesian system that runs on debt and spending and taxation versus savings, investment, and reinvestment, which is the Austrian system, which is something more similar to what I would expect to see coming out of the BRICS nations before this is all said and done. I think it's just precisely the wrong time, the wrong information, and the wrong thing to do. And if they really do it, if it isn't just lip service, well, it would just follow suit to the stupidity of the Western banks. And logic just can't explain what the heck it is that they're trying to do at precisely the worst possible time after it's been reclassified as tier one, a riskless asset. It just makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
One other thing, people talk about selling gold because it doesn't pay any interest, right? Well, it sure beats the hell out of negative interest. Right now, the interest rates on the 10-year treasury are 160 basis points, but the transitory inflation out of the CPI this last month is at 500 basis points. You're guaranteed to lose 340 basis points year over year compounding by buying fixed income. So an asset that pays no interest is a whole lot better than one that pays negative interest. And the interesting thing about it, no pun intended, is that John Williams from Shadow Stats just did an interview the other day on Liberty and Finance where he said the real level of inflation is closer to 12% than it is to 5%. And he bases his gauge just upon what previous administrations used to do before they changed it to fit an agenda of deficit spending. So, if what John is saying is right and hyperinflation is not too far away and we're already at 12%, well, that would mean you're losing 10.5% per year in fixed income. So until that happens, until you see interest rates trading above the real rate of inflation, there's a long way to go in this gold bull market. And the fact that the Bank of France would talk about selling their gold in this environment when real interest rates are negative, when the countries are running massive amounts of inflation, all but insolvent to begin with, it's about as stupid gets, I guess is all I can say.
Yeah, I definitely agree because, inflation is a tax. Just keeping your money in the bank are going to be losing all that money. When you have gold, it's going up at least in, dollar value. So I think you're definitely right on that for sure with all the stuff that's been going on. And, we see countries fighting for gold right now. There's been wars fought for gold, throughout the centuries. Actually Venezuela and England are fighting right now over gold. So it is pretty unbelievable that France would be doing this for sure. And you did have a sale for your gold, an email that you wanted to talk about, Andy?
Yeah, so one of the things that I'd like to do with you each week, Alex, is to offer your listeners a really special deal. Now, normally we have been doing silver on most of the interviews that I do. But lately, the last 2 weeks, we have been promoting some gold items that are very special. And for any of your listeners that want to buy gold, the first thing that they would do is email me right there at Andy@MilesFranklin. And I will make sure that they get the best price in the industry on whatever it is they buy. Right now, we are running a special on extra fine circulated pre-1933 $20 Liberties. Actually, they're going to be pre-1908, so 1907 and earlier. These are coins that were used. In fact, you can see behind me these coins right here. I don't know if you can see that. That's a $10 Liberty up there. And anyway, so those are the coins that were used as money prior to 1933 in the United States. That's the $10 version of it. We do have some of the 10s left, but most of them sold already. But the extra fine graded $20 gold piece, the $20 Liberty, which was all but in someone's pocket 130 years ago, will be in really nice condition in extra fine, but they're circulated. You'll see wear, which is kind of cool. You hold it in your hand and close your eyes and wonder who the heck held this in their hand, you know, prior to 1900 or what have you. It's a true piece of Americana. I believe it to be the best value out there in gold right now. Most of my career, that coin was selling at 15, 20+% above the price of a gold eagle. Right now, it's less than a gold eagle. For your listeners, we'll sell it for $129 over the price of gold. And if you're looking to buy gold, to me, this is one of the best investments in gold you could possibly make. It's safe from confiscation, no dealer reporting, far better upside potential. In 2007, 8, and 9, those coins were trading, the circulated grade, were trading at a 40% premium to a $1,000 gold price. That's what I would have bought them back from the public. And I did at $1,400 a piece when gold was at 1,000. Right now, you're able to get them at just a few percent over gold spot, 129 bucks. And I'm telling you, if you're looking to buy gold, this is as good as anything you'll find. And of course, anything that we offer. All your listeners need to do is put Free American Press or Alex sent me in the subject line, and I personally will make sure that they get the best deal in North America.
Yeah, that's great. So if everyone who wants to buy gold or silver, if you could please email Andy with the Free American Press or my name, that'll be really great. And was there anything else you'd like to add, Andy?
No, Alex, I just like doing this with you each week. I look forward to doing it next week. I just want everyone out there to know that Alex is a role model. He's a role model in some ways to me, even though he's 30 some years younger than me, because what he is, what he represents to me is hope. Hope that the younger generation, and I don't mean to talk about you to you, but I want you to know that you do represent optimism and hope to me encapsulated in your youth. The hope that younger people will understand what wealth is, what money is. Maybe next week we can talk about the 5 characteristics of money. And when you get to the 5th characteristic of money, that's when you diverge from the difference between gold and the dollar, where the dollar becomes currency because it can be counterfeited or reproduced easily with a keystroke. Gold can't be counterfeited, cannot be reproduced, it has to be mined. The other 4 are pretty close, but I would simply say to you, I find that, let's talk about this for 1 second. Durability, okay? So gold is very durable, so is the dollar, especially in an electronic form. It's durable. You might tear your dollar, you can tape it up and go to the bank. It's durable. It's portable. You can actually carry $1 million worth of gold right now, and it would weigh less than $1 million in $100 bills in the briefcase. It's divisible. The dollar is divisible. You can melt gold into a BB size or into a thin strain of wire that goes miles long, or a little bit of gold on a microchip. It's very divisible. It's uniform, just like the dollar. Dollar is a dollar everywhere, but so is a piece of gold everywhere. Here's where we diverge. And this is why the money in our wallet is currency and is not money. Gold is in limited supply, right? The US dollar isn't. We've created $9 trillion out of thin air over the past 15 months. And 1 trillion seconds ago was 31,688 years ago. And so when you talk about limited supply, that's where we lose it. And of course, you could also argue the dollar is beginning to lose acceptability A lot of countries don't want the dollar anymore. Gold is accepted everywhere, I guess, maybe except with the French central bank. But bottom line is that this is money, and it gives me hope that someone your age, 17 years old, understands what money is. And it gives me hope that you'll spread the word and that people your age will listen and pay yourself first. Pay yourself in real money, in gold and silver. I've been buying it every 2 weeks for 31 years. You know what, Alex? One day you'll wake up and you'll be like, holy crap, how did I get to be 50 years old already? And it happens like that. But when you're young, life is like a roll of toilet paper. You don't see it spinning. And as you get older, it starts to spin faster and you're more aware of it spinning faster. And by then, if you haven't started saving when you're a young man or a young woman, it becomes too challenging and too stressful. So now, when you think you have all the time in the world on your side, and you do, start saving. Put money away in gold and silver. Do it as often as you can. And that type of understanding and getting the word out to people your age gives me a tremendous amount of hope and optimism. And I'm honored to be here with you and look forward to doing it each week.
Well, that sounds great, Andy. We'll have you on the show next week. And I definitely think you're right, because I'm saving dollars. You know, I'm 30 years down the road. They're probably going to be worth as much as German money during World War II, after World War II. So I think you're definitely spot on with that. And thank you for being on the show, Andy.
Absolutely. And real quick, do you know why the largest life insurance policy in Germany issued before the war was never cashed in after the war? The reason? The postage stamp was worth more than the largest life insurance policy ever issued, because that's what happens in a hyperinflationary scenario. The currency becomes worthless. And when you print it and print it and print it with nothing behind it but a keystroke, as we were just talking about the 5 characteristics of money, you run into big problems. And I will promise you one thing. I believe that before you're my age, long before you're my age, the dollar bills that you call money or wealth or currency will be hanging from a frame in the Smithsonian. And you'll probably be looking at money right here on your iPhone. And that will be your money, your wealth. It'll be on a digital Fed dollar. And that'll happen long before you're my age. But, you know, do what the Chinese are doing. Do it what the sovereign wealth funds are doing. Do what the Russians are doing. Do what the most sophisticated investors in the world are doing, and that is de-dollarizing and putting money away in gold and silver. And the last piece of the puzzle, as that relates to saving money, is that it's a little bit of a pain in the butt to sell it. I don't mean that literally. I mean, it takes effort. Whereas if you have money on a credit card, in a checking account, or in cash, it really isn't tough to sell it. So just the actual act of having to box it up and sell it or drive it somewhere takes a little bit of effort. It lends itself into being an asset that you save. And that would be my advice to you and anyone who's out there listening. Pay yourself first, always. Put it in gold and silver and put it away. Take it off the table and hope you never need to use it. If you do, it's not just for an emergency, it's for an opportunity too. If not, now this is going to sound weird to a guy like you, but if not, you pass it on to your kids. And someday, God willing, you'll have kids. And I can promise you that the gold and silver that you bought today as a young man would be worth just as much in purchasing power or more when your kids accept it, or your grandkids. Been that way for thousands of years, and I think it will continue to be that way long after both you and I are gone. So for what it's worth, Alex, I'm appreciative of your time and great to be here, and look forward to our conversation again next week.
Well, that sounds great. Thank you, Andy. And thank you for the viewer who is watching this video. God bless.